So the next one is number 48, which is esoteric knowledge. Esoteric knowledge, also esoteric wisdom, agnosticism, inner truth, the inner sanctum, need to know. A fallacy from logos and ethos that there is some knowledge reserved only for the wise, the holy, or the enlightened, or those with proper security clearance. Things that the masses cannot understand and do not deserve to know, at least not until they become wiser, more trusted, or more spiritually advanced. The counterpart of this fallacy is that of obscurantism, also obscurationism or willful ignorance, that almost always said in a basso profundo voice or profundo, there are some things that we mere mortals must never seek to know. Example, scientific experiments that violate the privacy of the marital bed and expose the deep and private mysteries of human sexual behavior to the harsh light of science are obscene, sinful, and morally evil. There are some things that we as humans are simply not meant to know. For the opposite of this latter, see the plain truth fallacy. See also argumentum ad mysterium. So there's two things that are done here: esoteric knowledge and obscurantism. And it seems like what esoteric knowledge seems to claim is that some knowledge is meant for someone who's advanced, or once you get to a certain place, you are allowed to have certain knowledge. And if you're not there, then you can't have that knowledge. And then obscurantism is the like next level, it seems, where it's saying that there's some knowledge that is never meant to be known, ever. So both of these seem to have like an economy on, are implying an economy on knowledge. This is interesting because in a sense, I won't say I agree with the esoteric knowledge bit, but I definitely believe that in my own life, there was information that I was incapable of understanding or of using constructively until later in life. And so this one I find a little like the esoteric knowledge one I find interesting because um it's like I don't necessarily believe that someone can't have knowledge, but I do believe that there are some like truths or some things that some people, because they're just not, they haven't experienced enough life or they haven't had enough exposure to, yeah, exposure to like experience in life, I guess, that like certain knowledge just won't land. It won't make sense. Um, like a lot of people live in a way of being where they believe that they are the victim to their entire circumstance. Like they can't, they believe that life is happening to them and not for them. And they don't believe that even if I were to tell certain people, hey, do you realize that you are the creator of your entire life, that everything in your life, your income, the people you live with, your relationships with your family, your relationships with your friends, what you do for work, how you're paid, how much you're paid, how much money you have in your bank account currently, how much money you do or do not have in investments and savings. Do you realize you're in control of all of that? And there are people who, if I were to say that to them, they would look at me and go, no, that's not true. I was handed this situation because I was born in a family that XYZ and this happened to me and this happened to me and it's all been thrust upon me and I don't have control over my life. I'm a victim of this. And so there is a part of me that's like, well, if that person's determined to believe that they're a victim to life, even if I were to tell them, hey, like the true knowledge, which is you are in control of everything and you can create and have anything in this lifetime that you want. That is the truth. The harder truth is that the reason people don't have that is because they're unwilling to pay the price for it most of the time. And it's usually not the price they thought they were going to have to pay. Like some people think that to be rich, you have to step on other people's toes. Like, no, actually, to be rich, you got to lift everyone around you up. It's a whole other thing. But it's like that to me, yeah, that to me is what's coming up around this one because it's less about, I don't necessarily believe that certain knowledge isn't meant for certain people, but I do kind of like slightly resonate with, yeah, like there's some knowledge that people, because of where they're at in life, it won't land for them. And therefore, why would I even share that knowledge if it's not going to land with them, or it's not going to impact them, or if it's even going to produce the opposite result, um, which would be like not helping them progress in life and instead has them regress. So that's kind of what's coming up for me around this one. I'm curious your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, so esoteric knowledge. So let's see. Things you cannot understand or do not deserve to know, at least not until they become wiser, more trusted, or more spiritually advanced. Now, I do think that this does, at least the language suggests, it caters more to something that's divine. Um, but um, even in the case that you're talking about that's not divine, I would say the reason why a lot of these fallacies are important to acknowledge is that um, they are pretty convincing, uh, and they might be true in some circumstances, but not always. So we could say that this is true almost always, but not quite always, and that is what makes it a fallacy. And I just want to touch on really quick the you were talking about people that have control over their lives, and I agree with that. If I don't want to equivocate control with influence. So if we're saying that those are the same thing, then sure, then you have control of your life. If we are saying those different things, where influence means that you have um, partial control on the wheel, but there are other factors that do play into it. You don't have complete control, but you definitely have an influence. But to treat it as if you don't have any influence doesn't serve you. So um, you must, if you have a hand on a wheel at all, do as much as you can to support yourself with that, and don't let other factors do that. So yeah, I think that's esoteric knowledge. And then we could touch on the second one, the obscurantism one.
Yeah, and I like, and by the way, I'm all for that. I like the go from control to influence. I like influence more than control in that situation because yes, I don't believe anybody has absolute control, but influence, I'm 100% for. Yeah, obscurantism, it was essentially was the idea similar vein to esoteric knowledge, but instead it went into uh, there's some things that must never be known is kind of what it's saying. Um, and I like it said willful ignorance. Yeah, this to me, like I remember growing up, the way some things must never be known. I think this was biggest around, I like that they use the bedroom analogy. Growing up in a kind of just like a conservative area, like one of the things that was essentially never talked about and it was never communicated like how it works, how it doesn't work is like sexuality and sexual relationships. And so, it's like, it's interesting how I was raised. It was like essentially no one talks about this thing, no one discusses it. We're not allowed to talk about it. Um, and we're going to act like nobody knows about it. We're going to act like no one does it. And yet everyone knows about it and everyone talks about it, but we're going to act like it's not real. And it definitely, like, no one, I don't think anybody ever said to me, like, I never heard directly to me, no one's ever meant to know how sex works. That's just between you and God or you and your partner. Um, but I definitely remember there being obscurantism being applied to to sexuality growing up, and that led to a lot of I think culturally that leads to a lot of issues. I'm recalling right now someone who I was in in high school, and I don't know where I got a phone call from this girl who I didn't really talk to very much. I guess she just uh, she just saw me as someone who was safe to talk to, and she said, "Hey, I was raped by this guy at a party, and I need Plan B. Can you get it for me?" And she was just scared. She was scared and hurt and unsure of what to do. And I was like, "You were raped?" She goes, "Yeah, I was raped, and um, I yeah, I need Plan B." And I was like, "Okay, um, yeah, I'm happy to get you Plan B. And are you gonna tell anybody about this?" And she was like, "No, no, I just need the Plan B." And I was like, "Well, that's not how this works. You can't just like not have this person be unaccountable to their actions." And so I remember I went to the authorities. I was like, "Hey, this individual, I have text messages and confessions that this person raped this person." And it started a whole thing in the school, and I eventually was hated for, I was like ousted and attacked for having uh, called that individual out essentially. Um, but looking back at something like that, like these people were in high school. I knew the people who committed the act, and I don't believe those people were inherently shitty people or horrible people. I believe that what probably happened is they were overwhelmed by physical impulse, did not have good education, did not know how to control themselves, did not know how to understand what was going on, and they did something horrible and regretful. And it's like, I think that if, especially around sexuality, if a lot of the United States would stop looking at it from that lens of there are some things we're never meant to actually talk about, never actually meant to know, I think you could probably prevent a lot of really painful and hurtful, we'll call it sexual misconduct, and things that happen as a result during that time. Because the choice that I made, going through that time of my life was just don't engage with sexuality at all. Don't don't have sex with anybody. Don't engage in that type of behavior. Um, because it's so scary and unknown. Why would I mess with it? Because apparently I see all around me all these people getting hurt by it. So why would I engage with it? If the rules are unknown and so many people are getting damaged by it, why would I engage with it? And so I avoided it very often. Um, and that's not to say that I wasn't completely sexually inactive, but like I definitely wasn't seeking out sexuality, and it was for that very reason that there was so much um uh, there was so little clarity around it, because I wasn't meant to know any of that information until I was married or until I had a partner forever or whatever it might have been. So yeah, that's a kind of vulnerable share on that one, but that's what came up for me around obscurantism.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Um, well, I do see that the example that they used was definitely about like premarital sex and whatever. I don't think that the fallacy is specifically just that subject. Um, I think it's just like any forbidden knowledge. So, willful ignorance on just like any topic. So, for example, um, I've seen this as arguments for God. This kind of is like it's not quite big brain little brain fallacy, but it's close to it. Um, but I remember um, there was a part in the Bible that was a story about a town getting cursed, and the curse was um, that the sun wouldn't set for an additional 24 hours. So essentially, one day became two, and um, but only specifically for this one town. Uh, so I thought that was interesting. But then, so I brought up to one of my friends who is a young Earth creationist, and I'm like, "What do you think of this story?" Because like that means that like the sun didn't like just stop moving. The earth is rotating. Like it's because when the Bible was written, and this is not just my opinion, this is biblical scholars consensus that they absolutely believed the earth was flat then. So like they wrote it as if like, oh well, the sun just slowed down, right? um, but no, we know the earth is spinning. So if that story were to be correct, that would mean that the earth would literally half its speed just suddenly, and that would instantly kill everything on earth basically. um, and so I brought this up to my friend, and he's like, I didn't know that story. And his response was, there's just some things that I'm not meant to know. And it's like, that's the everlasting thought stopper. It's like it that like if that's your reason for things that like contradict, like that's rough, because now you prohibit yourself from learning anything further when it contradicts something you believe. You're just like, I'm just not going to investigate it because I don't want to know the answer. That is like the thing that prevents you from learning more, if it contradicts what you believe. So yeah, that's rough.
Got it.